Now at 10, the execution of Jamie Ray Mills is set for tomorrow evening at Holman Prison in Atmore.
This year, Governor Kay Ivey setting May 30th as the date to execute death row inmate Jamie Mills.
The state has executed Alabama death row inmate Jamie Ray Mills.
In May 2024, Alabama prepared to carry out one of the most controversial executions in recent years. Jamie Ray Mills, convicted of brutally murdering an elderly couple in 2004, would face lethal injection after nearly 2 decades on death row. But behind this sentence lies a haunting question. Was justice truly served, or did cracks in the system blur the line between guilt and due process? The crime that sealed Mills' fate began on a quiet summer day in 2004. Floyd and Vera Hill, an elderly couple living in Marion County, welcomed Mills and his wife into their home, not knowing that their kindness would lead to a gruesome end. What followed was a brutal assault involving a hammer, a tire iron, and a machete, tools of death used on people simply trying to help. Prosecutors argued the motive was robbery to fund a drug binge. Mills was convicted in 2007 and sentenced to death. His wife, Joanne, turned state's witness and received life with the possibility of parole.
Jamie Mills ambushed Floyd Hill in the shed, attacking him with a ball-peen hammer, a tire tool, and a machete.
For nearly 20 years, Jamie Mills lived in the shadow of his death sentence. During this time, questions emerged about the integrity of the prosecution. His legal team alleged misconduct, pointing to his wife's shifting testimony and undisclosed plea deals. In his final days, Mills pleaded for basic protections, like having his lawyer present during the execution and spending less time strapped to the gurney. But courts denied every appeal. The clock kept ticking.
The law firm representing Mills said in a statement after the execution that their client asked federal courts to provide some basic protections for him, including limiting the amount of time he had to spend on the execution.
As May 30th drew closer, protests mounted outside Holman Prison. Advocacy groups flooded the courts with petitions. Inside, Mills met with visitors and made final phone calls. Outside, the state prepared to make him the next person to die by lethal injection in Alabama, just months after it made headlines for using nitrogen gas in another execution. Jamie Mills spent his final morning quietly. He ate a meal of fried seafood, shrimp, catfish, oysters, and stuffed crab. At 6 p.m., he was strapped to the gurney. He looked at his family through the witness window, smiled, and gave them a thumbs up. His last words were filled with love. "I love my family. I love my brother. Carry on." At 6:14 p.m., a guard checked for consciousness. By 6:26 p.m., Mills was declared dead. The state's attorney general called the execution deserved, describing Mills' actions as cold and calculated.
"I love my family. I love my brother. I love my sister. I couldn't ask for anything more. I love you all. Carry on."
But not everyone saw justice in Mills's death. The Equal Justice Initiative issued a scathing statement, condemning the process as unconstitutional and cruel. They criticized Alabama's unapologetic approach to executions, claiming the state tolerates misconduct and deprives inmates of fair treatment. For some, Mills's death was a necessary conclusion. For others, it was a glaring example of how the system fails the very ideals it claims to uphold.
Alabama's unapologetic state officials to once again start a process of killing a human being with uncertainty about what level of torture and cruelty will take.
The witnesses inside the chamber saw more than just a man die. Mills' loved one sobbed as his breathing slowed, At 6:16 p.m., his chest stopped rising, but his death wasn't declared for another 10 minutes. He winked at his spiritual advisor, praying quietly before the drugs took full effect. His final moments were calm, but the trauma left in that room was anything but.
He appeared to take his final breath at 6:16 p.m., but was not declared dead until 6:26 p.m.
The story of Jamie Ray Mills forces us to look deeply into the moral weight of capital punishment. Justice may have been served for some, but the path there was filled with uncertainty, pain, and questions we may never fully answer. What we do with those questions and the lives behind them is a reflection of who we are as a society. March the 6th, 1998, a quiet night in Center, Alabama, shattered by a deadly robbery. A man named Keith Gavin would later be sentenced to death for a crime that haunted a family and divided public opinion for decades. Now, 26 years later, Alabama carried out his execution. But what really happened that night and in the years that followed? On March 6, 1998, William Clayton Jr., a devoted father of 7, was slain in cold blood by, repeat, murderer.
Court documents say Gavin shot and killed the delivery driver as he was pulling money out of the ATM to take his wife to dinner.
Keith Gavin wasn't a stranger to violence. In 1982, he was convicted of murder in Illinois and served 17 years. But just 6 months after being released, he was back behind the trigger. In Center, Alabama, Gavin ambushed William Clayton Jr. at an ATM, shooting him twice and taking off in his van. A high-speed chase and manhunt followed and ended with his arrest in the woods. But Gavin always claimed he didn't shoot anyone, blaming his cousin, a prison guard whose weapon was used in the crime. Gavin opened the van door, produced a gun, and immediately fired 2 shots at the driver, William Clayton. Gavin spent over 2 decades on Alabama's death row, filing appeal after appeal. He claimed ineffective counsel and pointed to his traumatic childhood, growing up in gang-ridden housing in Chicago. In 2020, a federal judge agreed that his defense failed him, but the ruling was overturned. Even in his final days, Gavin filed handwritten pleas to delay the execution, arguing he couldn't afford the filing fee. The Supreme Court denied it. As the execution date loomed, activists delivered petitions to Alabama's governor. His lawyers filed final motions. Keith Gavin refused his last meal, but snacked on chips and a chocolate bar the night before. Time was running out. July 18, 2024. At 6:10 p.m., Keith Gavin gave his final statement. "I love my family." He lifted his fingers in the Islamic gesture of faith, whispered a prayer, and closed his eyes. By 6:20, he was unconscious, and by 6:32 p.m., he was declared dead. Governor Kay Ivey said justice was finally delivered. The victim's son remembered his father as a devoted husband and questioned why Illinois released Gavin in the first place.
Any words from Gavin during the execution only, "I love my family," and what seemed to be a Muslim prayer before dying from a lethal injection at 6:32 p.m.
Gavin's execution reignited debate. Critics cited racial disparities and questioned the fairness of Alabama's justice system. Supporters argued that justice for William Clayton's family was long overdue. Alabama continues to rank among the top executing states and is now shifting toward nitrogen hypoxia as a new method of death. Witnesses described a quiet, efficient execution. One reporter noted Gavin whispered a Muslim prayer. His final moments were calm, a stark contrast to the violent act that led to this day. For the family of William Clayton, there was a sense of closure. For others, a deep discomfort remained.
Gavin was executed for the 1998 killing of William Clayton Jr. Governor Kay Ivey's office confirms his time of death just after 6:30.
Keith Gavin's story isn't just one of crime and punishment. It's a lens into America's evolving justice system. A victim's life stolen, a system questioned, and a final moment broadcast through courtrooms, headlines, and prayers. In the end, what remains is a question we still wrestle with. What does justice truly look like?